Welcome back to the Tomahawk. I'm Mike. I've got Matt and Justin with me, and we have a special guest, Dave Hanson from the movie Slapshot, also NHL player, former NHL player. Dave, how are you doing, man?
Doing pretty good, Mike. How you, Matt, and Justin doing?
We're good.
Fantastic.
Hanging in there.
We are doing well. We are in Chicago. Where are you located at?
I'm in Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Nice.
So how's the Blackhawks looking going into the playoffs? Oh, wait a minute.
Oh, man.
Jeez, I forgot. Sorry.
I knew that was coming. I should have seen that coming from a mile away.
Tough year.
Yeah. Talk about crash and burn.
Yeah.
But anyways, everybody, I want you to know if you, Dave has a website, cameo.com, and you can get him. He'll do a cameo for you. Matt has actually done this with them, and it turned out spectacular, cameo.com. And what did you search, Matt? Search for Slapshot?
I actually searched Slapshot, and there he was. But I'm just giving you goalies out there a warning. He's going to get you.
One way or the other, right?
He's going to get you. He's going to get you. Whether he's doing a flyby and putting a stick behind the skates and you fall on your butt, he's going to get you.
So, Dave, are you currently living in Pittsburgh? Because I know you're from Minnesota, right?
Yeah, I've been out in Pittsburgh since early 90s. Moved out here actually to work for the Penguins. Started out with the Penguins when I came out, and now I'm managing a big sports facility for a university in town that's got a couple of Division I hockey teams and a bunch of other fun stuff. So I've been out here for a while and still got ties back to the Midwest. I mean, Chicago and the North Stars were my two teams growing up, and had the thrill of being able to play against Bobby Hall, for a couple of years, and a few of the other guys from back in the day. So even though I cheer for Pittsburgh now that I'm here, anytime Chicago and now the Wild, of course, make a run for it, which hasn't happened for quite a while, but I'm there
Maybe
ready
this
to
year.
get on the bandwagon.
Yeah.
Dave, I'm curious, since you're a Minnesota fan, would you consider yourself a Stars fan as well, or is it more of a Wild type of a thing?
Not Stars at all. No, it'd be more Wild. Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, where the Excel Energy Center is literally the location I grew up playing my high school hockey at. So I got a lot of roots there, a lot of friends still. Billy Guerin's a good buddy of mine. I wish him only success. And of course, Boudreaux, who was there for a couple of years, has a little bit of Slapshot history as well. So, a lot of little ties back there that keeps me coming back.
Wow. So do you get a chance to go back home and do any kind of hockey clinics or anything like that?
No, I've hung up the skates. I actually had a hip replaced a few years ago, and got out and skate a little bit, but really to the point where the hip was feeling fine, but my feet hurt so bad from in the friggin' skates. I said that's it. Gave it up. But did enough Zamboni skiing in my days, enough hockey playing that I just decided I'll just keep my feet planted on ground these days.
Well, that's great. What was your experience like with the Penguins organization?
Oh, first class organization. But, I came back when I started out with them. It was, like I said, early 90s. They were still in the old igloo. Mario actually was still playing. And I'm trying to think, Jack Kelly was the president, and Craig
Probably
Patrick was
Yager,
the GM.
too, right?
Yeah, Yager was there. Had a pretty exciting time, pretty exciting hockey players there. So.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it was, great organization at the time, even better now, because it's a whole new era and they got the new arena and exciting times, but first class operation.
Go ahead, Matt.
Well, Dave, you played for the North Stars and the Red Wings. How was Detroit? I have to ask.
Well, I actually think I got more FaceTime in Slapshot than I did with the Red Wings and the North Stars. But Detroit sucked. Other than being
That's
in the
what we
National
chant
Hockey
to.
League. Yeah. I mean, it was the last, and you guys are too young to remember this, but if you're an historian, it was the last year that the Red Wings played in the Olympia Arena, the old Olympia, and which was really a barn. It was atrocious. but it was home. But the team sucked too. In fact, I think I think the nickname was the Dead Wings.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so thank goodness they did move me on. In fact, that's when that was a year when the NHL and WHA had their first trade between the two leagues, where they traded me and Steve Durbano off for Tim Sheehy and Vaclav Nedemansky. So imagine that. I got traded for a Hall of Famer. And
Wow.
and I went to WHA and had a blast.
I also heard some rumors that Herb Brooks was your coach. Is that true?
Well, he was for a short time. Herbie, back in '72, Herbie was it was in the start of his inaugural year at the University of Minnesota. And prior to that, he was coaching junior hockey in Minnesota. And I was a senior in high school at '71, '72 year. And Herbie, through a sports writer who wrote for the local St. Paul paper and covered high school sports and college sports as well as the pros, kind of started following me around my high school year and introduced Herbie to me and vice versa. And I actually had visions of going off and playing college football out of high school. And Herbie came knocking at my door and said, "We'd like to have you be a gopher." And never in my wildest dreams did I think that was even a possibility, playing hockey for the Minnesota Gophers. But there's not a kid in Minnesota that didn't want to be a Gopher. So
Yeah.
I dropped all aspirations of moving on to play college football and went and played at the university the first year. Herbie was the coach, but I wasn't good enough to play for the varsity team that he was coaching, even though we practiced with the varsity all the time. I was stuck on the JV. So I pretty much spent about a year and a half at the U, and again, through impatience and immaturity, I didn't hang in there with Herbie. I decided to go off and play junior hockey and took that path then after having a good experience with Herbie, actually, for about a year and a half.
That's awesome.
That's excellent. Dave, I got to ask you a question. I know Christian, your son, he played at Notre Dame in the NCAA. He eventually got to play with the Maple Leafs. Being just a hockey dad in general, what was it like to get to see your son play in the NHL just like you did, and then also get to play in a market like Toronto?
Well, it was really cool. I mean, the biggest thrill I had was watching him play at Notre Dame. And he and of course his teammates made a run for the national championship. I think it was his junior year, and lost out to Boston College in the championship game. Mm-hmm. So he came up short there, but that was just a blast. But then to literally on a ride home from Grand Rapids after they lost out in the regionals to Bemidji of all teams, in the car, got a call from Brian Burke, who's an old Minnesota buddy of mine, but he was the GM of Toronto, and flat out said right then and there in the car ride home, "Hey, we want to sign Christian."
Wow.
Yeah, so it was
awesome.
really cool. Yeah, so literally,
that's incredible.
In a matter of 3 days, Christian was under contract and playing for the Maple Leafs, which was unbelievable. And his first game was on the road in all places in Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. So his mother and I, drove 6 hours from Pittsburgh to Philadelphia to sit in the stands and watch him come out and do the rookie lap where they send him out.
Warm-ups. Yeah.
The thing in Philly, though, the place is full in Philly just for warm-ups, and he did the rookie lap out there by himself, and it was a thrill. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed watching him his entire pro career, and it just I couldn't have been more happy for him and more excited for myself.
Excellent.
So, Dave, at what point did you realize, I want to play hockey? Was it as a kid? Were you in, in high school, and you're like, I think that I could really play?
Mike, I really didn't think I really could play past high school. At the time, I was a 3-sport athlete in St. Paul in the high school, which was not uncommon for athletes. Especially at back in those days, which was mid to late 60s, early 70s. And I played baseball, football, and hockey. Actually loved baseball more than all three of the sports. Thought I was best at football, and but played mostly hockey, because the winters are so long there. And so, like I mentioned earlier, I actually thought, I was being recruited by a couple colleges to play football, and then I had some colleges. I'm trying to think, it might have been Colorado and Wisconsin. We're knocking on a door, tapping, I should say, on the door. About an interest in hockey, but I really, I wanted to play football, and again, until Herbie came knocking on the door, did I suddenly switched gears and decided to go the hockey route. And so, like I said, a year and a half there under Herbie's tutelage, I went off and played junior hockey in Minnesota, which was, of all people, for a fellow by the name of Doug Wu, who actually became almost as legendary as Herbie was in Minnesota as a coach for the Gophers later on. And the same sports writer that introduced me to Herbie and said, "Herbie, you got to take a look at this kid," was the same guy that then went to Glenn Sonmore, who was the GM of the Minnesota Fighting Saints, and said, "You know what, you might want to see about signing, Dave Hanson." And that's pretty much how it went. I mean, I just kind of went along and kept playing the game, not really looking to the next level until it was right in front of me. And then I paid attention to it because I just loved playing. I didn't really care about what was going to happen the next year. As long as I kept playing hockey, and as a result, that's kind of the approach I took when I first signed my first pro contract, and for the next 10 years of playing professional hockey.
Wow. So after high school, you went to junior. You played junior hockey, right?
Well, after clearly right out of high school is when I went to the University of Minnesota, so I was a true freshman.
Okay.
Unlike today, where most high school kids, unless you're really the phenom, most high school kids that have college aspirations, they end up playing a year or two of junior hockey so they can mature and develop, and then they move on to college. So yeah, literally right out of Humboldt High School on the west side of St. Paul, I went right across the river over to the University of Minnesota and started out there with Herbie, and then spent a little time there, and then jumped over into junior hockey and finished out pretty much the last year and a half there until I was 20 years old, and then signed a contract.
So how did the movie Slapshot enter your life? How did that go about?
Well, the Minnesota Fighting Saints farm team was in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. It was the Johnstown Jets played in a league that was the way the Charlestown Chiefs played in the Federal League. It was the bottom rung of the minor league ladder. But myself and the three Carlson brothers were all under contract with the Minnesota Fighting Saints, as well as a few other guys. And again, we got sent to Johnstown. There was also players from the Blues, St. Louis Blues, under contract there, from Calgary. So it was a smattering of some NHL contracted players and WHA players, as well as just some minor league players that were signed specifically to play there. So that team we had that year, which was a conglomerate of those players that I just described to you, just like in the movie, we were a rough and tumble team. You had the three brothers. You had Killer Hanson. You had some goal scorers, some college boys, some whack job goaltenders. And,
and we hair make me sick.
Yeah, those fans make me puke. Blah blah. And we went on and we won the championship that year. I think we were in 7th place when we finished up the regular season, got in the playoffs, and won the championship.
Wow.
In a town that the mills were closing. I mean, everything you see in Slapshot is what happened that year in Johnstown. And so one of the players on the team was an Ivy League guy, kind of like Ned Braden in the movie, who was playing with us, and his sister Nancy Dowd was a screenplay writer in Los Angeles, and as the story was told to me, he one night in a bit of a drunken stupor kind of bleeding his heart out to his sister, saying, "Oh my God, you can't imagine, where I'm at. I'm in this town. The mills are closing. They're trying to sell the team. We got these 3 brothers on the team, and this guy called Killer, and we ride buses, and they're talking about selling the team." And she says to him, "Well, who owns the team?" Right? And you heard that,
Chiefs.
Yeah. And he says, "Well, I don't know who owns the team." So she came into town and spent some time, watching us, and everything was going on. And I guess, the light bulb went off in her head, and she went back to LA, and her brother, the player I'm talking about, Ned Dowd, he would send off notes to her and send off little tape recordings to her of, things that went on each day. And so she wrote the script. So that was the 74-75 season that all that went on. So we were back there again in the 75-76 season. And that's when they started casting actors to play the roles. And they were getting, A-listed actors like Nick Nolte and Peter Strauss and John Travolta. And, of course, they had Newman. But, they wanted these guys to play the Hanson brothers and
No way.
Killer Carlson. Yeah. But they couldn't skate.
Yeah.
And, one of them broke his ankle trying to learn how to skate. Another one got, slammed it through his shoulder out, fell into the board. So finally they got so frustrated. Ned Dowd was actually, the player that I mentioned earlier. They actually hired him because he decided not to play anymore. Hired him to come down and try to teach these people how to skate. And he said, "Listen," he says, "they can't skate. There's nothing to do. So why don't you just go back? Yeah, why don't you just go back and try these guys, to play themselves?" And so that's kind of what happened. In short, they came back during the season, and Jack, one of the third brothers, actually ended up going up to Edmonton playing with the Oilers during the season. So they came back, had us do a little script reading, and I say, despite the awful job we did of trying to read a script, they said, "Well, let's just give it a try." So they stuck me in as a third brother, brought in Jerry Hauser to play the Killer Carlson role. And
Yeah, he was great.
And then, he was awesome.
Yeah, he nailed it.
He did a terrific job. But, and that's kind of how it went. And they stuck us in front of camera, and then we were off and running.
Wow.
That's incredible.
So interesting because, when I first saw the movie, I was always like, I wonder how they came up with the story for this movie, especially with
a documentary,
especially with them trying to figure out who the owner is, like I thought that was really funny how like nobody knew who the owner was, and that's so great. What was it like working with Paul Newman? Like at what point did he come in? Well,
really, you should rephrase that question. You should say, what was it like for Paul Newman working with us?
I apologize.
I got to look I think it's a bit of a funny story. My first introduction to Paul was we were actually still in we were in the playoffs. We were playing Philadelphia, I think it was. And so I'm having a pregame nap, and I'm rooming with 2 other guys. One is Bruce Boudreau, as I mentioned earlier, and the other one was a fellow by the name of Henry Taylor. And we were on the second floor of a 3-story house. I think the Carlson brothers might have been on the top floor. And so I'm having a pregame nap. We got a game that night. So I'm hearing, out of a sleep, I wake up and to knocking on the door. And I'm thinking, come on, one of you guys get up and get that. I'm trying to, so, Boudreaux slept like a rock, and Hank Taylor didn't get up. So I finally get out of bed, and I walk up to the door, and I'm in my underwear and my dirty socks, and I open the door and I'm looking at this guy. Now this guy, I'm looking down at this guy because the steps came up to the threshold into the house, but I'm looking down at these most magnificently blue eyes. And, I'm kind of, and he looks at me and he says, "Oh my gosh." He says, "Sorry." He says, "Are you Dave?" And I says, "Yeah." And he says, "Well, I'm Paul Newman." And he puts his hand out. And
oh my gosh.
Yeah. And I says, "Oh, well, yeah, I guess you are, Paul. Hi." Shake my hand. And he says, He says, well, geez, I'm sorry. He says, did I wake? I said, yeah, you did, actually. We got a game tonight, this and that. He said, no, he's all apologetic and this and that. And he says, well, listen, he says, we don't want to bother you. I said, well, what's up? What do you want? He says, well, I got these guys from the studio. They want to look at what a hockey player's apartment looks like. And, do you mind if we come in? I says, listen, I don't mind. I says, just know that I'm going back to bed. I'm closing the door. I says, when you get done, just, make sure you close the door behind you. And he says, fine, we'll take care of it. So I start walking back. He says, hey, Dave. I said, yeah. He says, the race is on, I don't know what race it was, but he says, the race is on. You mind if I sit down and watch TV, in your room? I said, no, go ahead, Paul. Good night, goodbye. Dave, yeah. Paul, what? He says, you got any beer in the fridge? Yeah. I said, Paul, there's beer in the fridge. Grab as much as you want. I don't care. So that was my first meeting with Paul Newman.
Wow.
That's awesome.
But I can tell you, we all actually, we spent like literally 3 months in a row together filming slap shots, seeing each other pretty much every day. And he was just a quality guy. Unless he was Paul Newman and he was a superstar, you would have thought he was just another regular guy on the set. That's how he behaved. He treated everybody that way. You'd go out, drink with us, buy the beers, or we'd buy him the beers. And we'd hit the bars until somebody, started getting a little crowded around him, and he'd say kind of Dutch out. But we had a blast with him. He was a big practical joker and loved to give it as much as take it. And terrific guy, just a wonderful guy.
He nailed Coach Dunlop too. I thought that was like a perfect coach. Like his speeches and pregame stuff, he nailed it.
Well, a little trivia that a lot of people don't know is that he was not the original actor casted to play Reggie Dunlop. It was actually Robert De Niro.
Really?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so George Roy Hill, the director, when he, first, from what I've been told, when he first sat down with De Niro and started talking about the movie and this and that, he flat out said, well, can you skate? And De Niro says, well, no, I can't skate, but we can work around that. And I mean, we can change the script here, this and that, blah, blah. George Roy Hill wouldn't have anything to do with it. He says, sorry, Robert, you're not the guy, and I got rid of him and went right to Newman right away.
So Newman was good on the ice?
Newman was a good skater.
That's awesome. I didn't know.
Yeah, he grew up in Ohio, so he skated. He said he used to skate on the ponds and this and that. But where he struggled when we started out was putting a hockey stick in his hand, because he never had a hockey stick in his hand. He didn't play any hockey, so he really didn't know what to do. So, he was so athletic, and he worked so hard. Every day he'd work hard on the ice and, he'd try to become a better skater. But he would say, hey, guys, you got to help me. What do I do with a hockey stick? How do I do this and that and this and that? So we would spend time with him, and he would then go off in a corner and practice, stick handling or holding the stick or whatever he would do. And, certainly pulled it off, came across really well on screen.
Wow. That's incredible.
So what was your favorite scene, Dave? I know my favorite scene was probably your guys' first shift, where you I couldn't, maybe 20 plus penalties in that first shift, but it was awesome. What's yours?
It's funny. I don't know that I have a favorite scene. I think that, we would do one thing. George Roy Hill realized right from the start, after he took a couple takes of us trying to do our first acting, is that we couldn't act. So he kind of gave us, a little bit. He actually gave us a lot of leeway where, we had our lines, our scripted lines, and so he would set the scene up for us, and then he'd kind of, let us
freestyle
do it how we want to do it, ad lib this and that. So there's little tidbits, that we did in our ad libbing that was kind of fun, similar like when we're in a hotel room and he walks by and he sees that we're playing with our race cars. Well, the only scripted lines there was, hey, coach, we're on the road, we're set to go, tell us when.
We're on the road, yeah,
set to go, tell us when. And, hey, guys, well, I'm shuffling the lines, I'll let you go. And he walks off. So from that point on, it was all ad lib. Steve's running around, and I'm saying, you broke the darn car. I'm not playing anymore.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of those little things where you kind of know where I did this and that, and it was done this way and that way, kind of ad-lib, that kind of just add up to a lot of fun stuff.
That's my father-in-law's favorite line. Him and his assistant coach. Every other line is, "Hey, we're on the road." I mean, we're on the road.
Yeah.
Got to give him a little shout out to my father-in-law. But
That's awesome.
Go on ahead.
Dave, I got to ask you, when you got hired to, play the role, what was going through your mind? Did you think, Dream Sequence 40 years later, this was going to be a movie that everybody still talks about and loves? Or was it like, hey, this is going to be something I'm going to get to show my family down the road and that'll be about it?
Well, we actually thought that we were going to be the next Academy Award winners. Good-looking studs. The chick loved the glasses. No, truthfully, the Carlson brothers and myself. The Carlson brothers are Minnesota boys as well. They're up from the Iron Range up in trying to think, the Virginia, Minnesota, and me being from St. Paul. So our standard off season was at the end of the season. We packed up the car, we drove home, and then we'd spend the next, the rest of the summer before training camp doing nothing but playing softball, drinking beers, and eating chicken wings and onion rings. So, and then we go to training camp literally to get in shape. Unlike now, people are in shape before they go to training camp. So this was just unique. We had no idea. They kind of said, "Hey guys, we want you to be in a movie. We're willing to pay you, actually pay us more than what we were making,
Playing
weekly. Yeah, playing.
Yeah.
And we'll pay for your apartment. You'll have food on set. They gave us all that stuff. We said, "Oh, okay, what the hell? I mean, we've got nothing better to do. We'll just stay here and we'll see how it goes." So, had no idea, no concept. I mean, it actually got to the point where couple months into it, it was so friggin' boring. And, we had, again, you're talking 19, 20, 21-year-old kids.
Mm-hmm.
We had to oftentimes be up at 6 a.m. to get on set and sit and get in makeup and then sit there all friggin' day. And then, by 6 or 7 o'clock at night, thinking you were going to do your scene, they'd come in and say, "Sorry, guys, we didn't get you today. That's a wrap." Well, that lasted for, a good month, and to the point where we started bringing in beer into the locker room. We'd crack a beer here, then it turned into a 12-pack, and then then there's a couple times where they finally get around to us by the end of the day, and they say, "Okay, bring the Hanson brothers out." And we go out there, and we're so friggin' hammered by that time. They say, "Oh, that's a wrap. We'll do it. You'll be the first thing tomorrow morning."
Oh man.
Oh, that's
man,
awesome.
That's funny. Go ahead, Justin.
Yeah, we've been talking a lot about what's been going on in the NHL just in general, not to shift gears completely, but Dave, what's your take on just the way the league is in general now? I mean, obviously we just had that big brouhaha with, Tom Wilson and the Rangers and everything, but where do you see the league going? Do you think fighting is on its way out? Do you think fighting is still needed? Do you think it's getting too soft? What's your take on the current NHL product?
The answer is yes to all of that. I guess like anybody that played in a certain area, that their favorite era was when they played. Back in the day, when I played, the game was such that there was a role for the fighting, for the enforcer, for the guy out there to keep other players honest. To have intimidation, physical intimidation being part of the game plan, part of the makeup of the team,
right?
Part of a strategy. And then, but the game has shifted. So, the answer, I think some of your questions there, fighting is going out of the game because it's not a part of the game. They're calling it so tight anymore that, there really isn't that intimidation factor, or you got Tom Wilson back in the day. If Tom played back in the day and Tom Wilson took a run at Patrick Kane, let's for example,
sure.
Let's just say
sure.
or Panarin for that matter, but you would have, let's say for an example, in Chicago you'd have a Bobby Probert there to come out and say, hey, yeah, oh yeah, Grooms, you have Stu out there and just flat out and either go right up to Wilson and say, hey, you either knock that off, or I'm going to go after Ovechkin, or I'm going to go after, one of your guys.
Right.
Or I'm just going to knock your block off. And, if he was a legitimate tough guy, and Wilson is, the two would fight, and then it would settle things down, and there was an understanding, But nowadays, you don't have a counter to Wilson. The only guy that really could maybe match up to him is Reeves,
In Vegas.
Ryan
Yeah.
Reeves
Yeah.
in Vegas. But they don't play each other, and so every team doesn't have that anymore. Where in the day you did, Gretzky had McSorley and Semenko and other guys. So you didn't touch Gretzky. You let Gretzky play his game, and vice versa. So the game today, the guys obviously are faster, they're bigger, they're stronger, they're overall they're more skilled. I wouldn't say that there's guys that are more skilled than a Lemieux or a Gretzky or a Hull or Keon or a Gordie Howe, but overall there's more skilled players, even out, and so they don't play as physical anymore because it's just not that is phasing out in the regular season. Playoffs, it picks up a little bit. I love playoff hockey now.
Oh, I can't wait.
Yeah, but I do miss the fightings. When you say the big brouhaha with the Capitals and Rangers,
The line brawl.
I thought it was a joke.
Yeah.
It was a joke. And part of it is certainly because you got face shields now. I mean,
Right.
You break your hand.
Yeah, I can't imagine trying to punch one.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it was hard enough when the helmets came in. You had to fight with helmets, and hit helmets, but at least you had a face to target for. Now you got, you're lucky if you hit any flesh, other than the flesh on your knuckles, which is a good reason why they ought to let people wear the foil. If they're gonna keep fighting in the game, they're gonna wear helmets and face shield. They ought to at least let people put on the foil.
So who actually came up with that? Did you come up with that idea for the foil?
Well, Nancy Dowd, the screenplay writer, was so great, so creative. She literally captured all the nuances of the game and the characters of the game and this and that. So I'll give her credit for elevating to foil on the knuckles from what we did. And what we did was the Carlsons and myself, when we first started playing in the league that year, we would tape up our knuckles with tape, with sock tape, white tape, medical tape.
Right.
To protect the knuckles and kind of give us an edge to help cut the guy, this and that. So, after we kind of went through a few rounds, during the season, the Commissioner Timmons, instigated a rule into the book that says you can no longer have tape on your hands unless you're injured. But if you get into a fight with tape on your hands and you cut the other guy, you get an added penalty, and you also get thrown out of the game. So our coach then at that time in the off season was a golf pro at the local country club. So his name was Dick Roberge. He was actually the guy that played the referee in the first scene of the movie, the first referee in the Stripes. And so we said to Dick, when they put that rule in, we said, hey, coach, do you think maybe you could get us each a pair of golf gloves? He says, well, golf gloves for what? He says, well, just, can you do that? And he said, yeah, I can do that. And so he did it. Well, the golf gloves back then are certainly much different than they are today. Today, they're a very thin synthetic type material. Well, back then they were leather, and they were pretty thick leather. And so what we did is we took the golf gloves, we took the rasp, we scraped up the knuckles on the golf clubs, we put them in water, and overnight we'd put them on the radiator behind our bench. And then the next day, when we were ready for the game, we'd put on these crusty, hard, crunchy golf clubs on our hands and go out and play the game. And before they got all sweaty and soft, we made sure we dropped our gloves, and we had something other than tape on our hands, a replacement for the tape to be able to give us that advantage. So Nancy Dowd kind of took all of that and she elevated it to putting the foil on the knuckles every game.
Oh man, that's great.
incredible.
Yeah.
Man, do you guys have anything else you want to ask, Dave?
Yeah, Dave, I got one more for you. Do you have a favorite current NHL player?
Well, probably because I'm in Pittsburgh and I get to see him every night, whether on TV or down at the game. But, Crosby, I just marvel at the things that Crosby does. And
For sure.
and I
Yeah,
often,
for sure.
and I often say to people, they say, what are you talking about? The regular, the fly-by fan and this and that. And it's kind of like, unless you have an educated eye, because the game is so fast and it's so tight and there's so little room out there anymore, unless you really watch him, do you really appreciate the amazing things he does? Unlike back in the day where, Lemieux was so big and the game was a little bit more, guys had a little bit more space, even though it was a clutch and grab. Lemieux and Gretzky and those guys, you could see more of what they did. But now, like I say, fast, the size, the speed, they tighten up, everything's kind of tightened up into little sections. You watch Crosby and it's amazing that he just does things that kind of like, oh my God, how did he do that? So I would say, yeah. And again, because I see him so much and I know there's, I'd love to be watching McDavid play every night and, and other players, out there doing stuff, Ovechkin scoring goals, those kind of guys. But, I'd have to say Crosby, is probably at the top of my list.
I remember when Crosby was coming into the league and, he was being touted as the next one, and Sid the Kid. And to be honest with you, if you look, he came across, in hindsight now, just as he was touted to be when he was younger. He really brought the game into, the next level. When Nathan McKinnon came into the league, he started training with Crosby because, Sid is so strong on his skates, and he's, it takes a lot to bring him down, especially when he has the puck. Are there any other players that stand out to you that you would say that were marketed and coming out of juniors, coming into the draft and really came along like Crosby did?
Yeah, maybe some goalies, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Who's the next superstar goaltender, or the last superstar goaltender that you talk about coming in the league, even to this day? They're not.
I can't even think of one day.
Yeah, I got nothing.
Vasilevsky, Tampa Bay. Come on.
He's not a superstar.
Oh, he is. He's going to win the Vezina again.
Just because he wins the Vezina doesn't mean he's a superstar.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Vezina. Where's the rings. Bar? Yeah. But to answer your question, I'd say McDavid. I think McDavid has lived up to everything. It's just too bad he's on a lousy hockey team.
Yeah,
right. It's true. Right.
But you put him, in one of the top teams, and he's doubling what he's doing there. So yeah, I would say McDavid. I don't think it's any question about him.
I got one last question for you. Edmonton for years has been getting the first round pick, after first round pick after first round pick. Do you think that maybe there should be a provision in the rules saying that after you've had so many first round picks in a determinate amount of time that you have to give up that pick to the second worst team?
I haven't put a lot of thought into that one. I've never even heard that idea thrown out there before, but I would just say off the cuff, no. You want teams that are that low to rebuild. You look through the history of good franchises, and teams that have gone on, they've done it through the draft like that, and they build. I mean, Pittsburgh was an example of that. When Crosby came on board, and then who did they get shortly after? Was it Malkin? And so no, it's just a shame though that they get those players and they still can't put a team around them to win. But I would say, without putting a whole lot of thought in it, to answer your question, no, I don't think so at this point. But I could change my mind. Just give me 6 Bud Lights and keep the conversation going.
It took us a while to get good too. We had to go through some hard time. We got
Oh yeah.
Dave's, Kane,
Chicago's
and
a good example.
yeah.
And they did a wonderful job, and then they made the brilliant move of getting rid of Quinville. I mean,
Yeah, that's still.
Oh
man.
gosh, I don't even.
We still have nightmares about that one.
We don't know what this coach is doing. We just
No.
we don't know what he's telling his players before the game or what his system even is. It just doesn't make sense.
No.
Yeah.
Well, I always say the players still have to play. I mean, it still boils down to the
That's
players.
true.
That's
you
true.
know, But,
That's true.
But the coach, puts the playbook together.
Well, Dave, this has been a great interview. Just listen to your stories, man, and listen to you talk here. It was great. I had a fantastic time interviewing you, and I'm sure Matt and Justin did as well.
Definitely.
I want to say it again, cameo.com. If you want to get a cameo deal with Dave Hanson, he'll get you squared away. Matt has done it. It was phenomenal. I watched the video. I thought it was hilarious.
It was awesome.
It was hilarious. I couldn't believe it, to be honest with you, at first.
He's tough. He's a tough guy.
Made me glad I didn't play goalie.
Dave, do you have anybody you want to give a shout out to, or anything that you want to say that you want to put out there?
No, I think I'm actually heading to Minnesota tomorrow. I'm going to drive up through Chicago and heading up there to go see some family, and even stopping off there on the way back for a little brief hello to some folks. But no, I enjoyed talking with you. I'm glad you reached out. I wish you all the best, and hopefully the Blackhawks, because they're still one of my favorite teams, get on the right track, and y'all got something good to cheer about up there.
Yeah, we got to get you back on maybe before next season, and we could break down the team, and if you're up for it, that'd be awesome. We'd love to have you.
Yeah, sure. Be happy to.
I mean, awesome. I'd love to get the goalie roster on people that are going to show up to camp and just hear you go off on them all right down the line, to be honest with you.
I hope we sign a goalie just so I got some firepower for you. Then.
Well, I can tell you one thing, they're not going to hire you to come out and be a goalie coach for them.
Well played, sir. Well played.
Well, thanks again, Dave. This has been a blast. This is the Tomahawk, and we're out of here.